Before starting today's video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video to encourage us to provide the best. When I was a teenager, I used to play football for our high school team. Unfortunately, during an away game, my leg was broken in two places when I was tackled by two players. One of them accidentally fell with his knee landing on my shin, fracturing both my tibia and fibula. It was excruciatingly painful, but surprisingly not the most traumatic part of the experience. The game took place at 6 p.m., and by the time I arrived at the hospital, it was already after 9 p.m. Due to the severity of the break, the doctor recommended keeping me overnight to perform surgery the next morning. At first, this seemed like good news, but upon arriving at my room, I was informed that I would have to share it with another patient since the hospital was currently overcrowded. Initially, I didn't mind and hoped to get some sleep before my surgery the next day. The other patient was already asleep when I entered the room, and I told my parents they could go home for the night after speaking with the doctor about what time they needed to return in the morning. However, I soon realized that it would be difficult to rest in a shared room, but it only took me about an hour to fall asleep. After taking medication for my broken leg, the pain subsided, and I fell into a deep sleep, having vivid dreams. However, I was abruptly awakened by a strange sound coming from across the room. I assumed it was one of the doctors or nurses checking on us and didn't pay it any mind. As I tried to get back to sleep, I became aware of heavy breathing and felt someone staring at me. The hairs on my arms and legs stood up, and chills ran down my body. Without opening my eyes, I sensed that someone was staring at me. Suddenly, I let out a scream and opened my eyes to see a man with bloodshot eyes standing over my hospital bed. He jumped back when I screamed, but he continued to stare at me. I attempted to yell for help, but no words came out. I glanced around the room and realized that the bed next to mine was empty, so the man must have been the other patient. I locked eyes with him, unsure of what to do, and hoped for the doctor to arrive. The man took a step toward me and placed his hand on the side of my bed, causing me to scream again. He responded by mimicking my scream and leaned in closer and closer to me. Feeling extremely uncomfortable, I balled up my fist, unsure of how to react. Fortunately, a doctor and 3 nurses rushed into the room and pulled the man away from me. The doctor explained that he had dementia and was there to get checked for cancer. He likely woke up and had a fit, unaware of his surroundings. Due to safety concerns for both myself and others, the doctors decided to move me to another room and let the man have the room to himself. I was too shaken up to get any more sleep that night, but once I was settled into a different room, I was able to at least get comfortable as I waited for my parents to return and the surgery in the morning. My leg healed without any complications, but the memory of the man standing over me as I slept still haunts me to this day. At the age of 22, I was working at a movie theater when I suddenly experienced excruciating pain in my stomach and lower back. As I was sweeping up after a showing, the pain caused me to collapse. A coworker then took me to the hospital, where I found out that I needed to have my gallbladder removed. The idea of needing surgery, let alone having an organ removed, terrified me, especially since I disliked hospitals. However, both the doctor and surgeon were very reassuring and assured me that the procedure was relatively simple and that I would be fine. On the day of my surgery, I was placed under anesthesia and woke up in my hospital room feeling relieved that the surgery had been successful. Shortly after waking up, a nurse came in to check on me and asked how I was feeling. I informed him that I was feeling okay, albeit a little lightheaded. The nurse reassured me that this was a normal side effect of the anesthesia wearing off and that the doctor would be checking on me soon. So I waited patiently for the doctor to arrive. As I lay back, Feeling increasingly lightheaded, any hopes of relaxation were dashed when I experienced a sharp pain that seemed to take over my entire torso. Struggling to breathe, I began to hyperventilate, and as panic set in, the pain in my chest intensified. By the time the doctor entered the room, everything around me had started to spin. Though he asked me if I was all right, I was unable to respond, and the last thing I remembered was the doctor calling for help from other staff members. Subsequently, I woke up a few hours later to discover that I had suffered an allergic reaction to the anesthesia used in the surgery. The doctor informed me that it had been a severe reaction, which had resulted in cardiac arrest. Apparently, the heart monitor that I had been connected to was malfunctioning, and there was a strong possibility that I had been having a heart attack since waking up from the surgery. Though I eventually recovered, I needed to be monitored for an additional day and night to ensure that there were no long-term effects from the allergic reaction. Since that harrowing experience, I have not undergone any surgeries, and I hope to never need to do so again. When working overnight at a hospital, there is hardly ever a slow night. Although some nights may be less intense than others, patients never seem to stop coming in. As a doctor with years of experience, the days start to blend together, and the only thing that distinguishes them from one another is a unique patient. However, there was one day while working at Tampa General in Florida that I will never forget. It wasn't because of my patient, but rather an unexpected event. Around 12:30 in the morning, halfway through my shift, I checked on a patient and noticed they were dehydrated from the medication we had given them. After grabbing a fresh IV drip bag, I noticed people shuffling around in the hallway. Assuming a patient in critical condition had arrived, I stepped out to find that everyone was rushing into various rooms. Another doctor ran into the room before closing the door, and when I asked what was happening, I learned there was an active shooter in the building. Fear coursed through my body, despite having trained for this scenario. I never thought I would experience such a situation. After securing the door, we checked on the patient and informed them of the situation, attempting to keep them calm while also maintaining our own composure. As we sat in the locked room, a blanket of silence fell over the hospital. Each passing moment felt like an hour, and the only sounds we could hear were the hum of machines running in other rooms. Suddenly, we heard footsteps slowly making their way down the hallway. We held our breath as the sound passed by our door, but our fear only intensified when whoever it was stopped just down the hall, fumbled with the desk, and then turned back in our direction. As they walked past our room again, we heard the sound of someone slamming against a hospital room door, followed by 3 gunshots. In a moment of panic, we gasped or screamed, then quickly remembered to remain silent. There was commotion in the hallway, and we heard someone yelling. After listening closely, we realized the police had finally arrived. We waited for them to confirm that it was safe to come out and take our stations, but a pit remained in our stomachs as we wondered what happened to the person who was shot. Fortunately, we learned that the police had apprehended the gunman before anyone was injured. Apparently, the gunshots we heard were the gunman trying to shoot the handle of a door in an attempt to gain entry, but our emergency locks prevented that from happening. According to what we heard, the gunman was looking for someone who had been hospitalized after being shot in an alleged gang-related incident. About 15 years ago, my grandmother was sick and required frequent visits to the hospital. However, as we were running out of money, we couldn't afford to admit her to a nice and high-tech hospital. Instead, we opted for a nearby hospital with a decent reputation and an average team of doctors and nurses. The only issue with this hospital was that it was rumored to be haunted due to its morgue located in the basement. People believed that the spirits of those who died in the hospital lurked around the premises, haunting people. About 15 years ago, My grandmother was sick and required frequent visits to the hospital. However, as we were running out of money, we couldn't afford to admit her to a nice and high-tech hospital. Instead, we opted for a nearby hospital with a decent reputation and an average team of doctors and nurses. The only issue with this hospital was that it was rumored to be haunted due to its morgue located in the basement. People believed that the spirits of those who died in the hospital lurked around the premises, haunting people. As a 9-year-old, I was afraid and paranoid about the situation and convinced my parents to arrange someone else to stay with my grandmother at night to avoid any encounters with the alleged ghosts. My uncle, who was about 8 years younger than my dad, agreed to stay with her at night. One night, my grandmother woke up at 2 in the morning after hearing strange noises and feeling strange sensations at her feet. She saw a tall, thin woman with long black hair sobbing at the foot of her bed. The woman's loud sobs woke everyone up except for my uncle, who was sleeping soundly. My grandmother couldn't move or make a sound due to fear. The figure stayed there for over 4 hours until dawn, when it vanished into thin air. Later that day, my uncle discovered a pool of blood under my grandmother's bed, along with a pair of scissors and an entire human tongue covered in blood. Shocked, terrified, and worried, he quickly took my sickly grandmother out of that hospital to find a different one for her needs. We never returned to that hospital and avoided going near it altogether. My grandmother passed away last year at the age of 80, and I'm glad that she was safe during this strange occurrence at the hospital. Thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and sharing it to support me. The best is yet to come.